Mhm. Hello, Lounsberry Hollow students. You remember the other day when we talked about the different kinds of water pollution. We could talk about a harmful chemical in the water. We can talk about disease-causing bacteria. We can talk about nutrients, and we looked at an example of how nutrient pollution damages lakes. Today, we're going to look at something called sediment pollution. And I'm also going to give you an experiment that you can do that will help you understand not only sediment pollution, but also a way you can understand a little bit more about the ecosystem of a lake or a river or a stream. But right now, let's jump ahead and we'll come back to this. But right now, let's look at our vocabulary. The first vocabulary word is erosion. Now, we're talking, when we speak about erosion and sediment pollution, we are specifically talking about soil. It's on the land, the rain comes or snow comes, and it begins to move the soil particles into a stream or into a river. Generally speaking, when you have grass or other vegetative cover being a fancy scientific word for plants growing on the land, you don't get this washing away of soil particles. However, when your land is disturbed or when the vegetative cover or the plants are no longer there, you can get little bits of soil eroding away or washing away off of the land and into a stream or a river. The water will then carry these little particles of soil to a new place. When those particles arrive in the river, we no longer call it soil, we call it sediment. Now, you may know from some of your other science classes that the word sediment is used for the material down at the bottom of a lake or the bottom of an ocean or the bottom of a river or the bottom of a stream. We talk about sedimentary rocks, for instance. But sediment is those soil particles that get eroded off of the land and find themselves being carried along by a river or a stream. You might be familiar with some of the things that make up soil. And one of the things that make up soil is sand. Now, sand are small, loose pieces of rock or soil. They are called grains. They're smaller than gravel, which you're familiar with from seeing gravel on driveways, but they are larger than particles of mud or clay. So you've all seen sand, you know what sand looks like. But these are the largest particles that we're going to be thinking about today. The next particle down in terms of its size is silt. It's like dust. If you looked at particles of silt and you looked at dust in your house, they would be very similar in appearance. It's very tiny bits of rock or minerals, a bit larger than our smallest particles, clay, but smaller than sand particles. Silt particles are so small that they are very difficult to see without a microscope or a good magnifying glass. And then the smallest particles of all are particles of clay. Now, of course, you're familiar with clay from making things in pottery, or you're familiar with clay for molding it and doing it perhaps in art class. But these are extremely small particles of rock. And of course, in this particular type of rock, when the clay is mixed with water, it makes a soft, gluey sort of mud. So we're looking at three types of soil particles. We're looking at sand grains, we're looking at silt, and we're looking at clay. And of course, when we talk about sediment, what we're talking about are the materials that settle down to the bottom of a lake or a river or a stream or even the ocean. So let's consider sediment pollution. Well, I have a crazy dachshund. All right, I have some dirt that I took from my front yard. And I'm going to go and fill this bottle with a little bit of water. And while I am doing that, I'm going to pause the video and we'll resume in part 6.